So somebody had said, a comment of mine had said that, if the pilgrims were filled with the Holy Spirit, how do you explain the Salem witch trials? Well, it's very simple. The Salem witch trials went back to the Church of England. It was still the colonies, even though the pilgrims fled here. The Church of England was still running the place. Okay, but so even though I don't agree with what they did, first of all, there weren't witch burnings here. There was in Scotland, there was in Ireland, there was in Wales, there was in England. Okay, it goes back to like the 14th century, but people, the women that were hung, were hung here. Okay, I don't agree with it because, and I would imagine that where the confusion is because people not understanding the New Testament was the new doctrine to follow. So this is what Jesus said to do. Submit yourselves therefore to God, which that's what I've been saying, surrender to God. Resist the devil and he will flee from you. Now in the Old Testament, God did have them, taking care of the Canaanites and okay, but you have to, that's why you need to pray on these things, because although the Old Testament is definitely important, you need to understand, take it into consideration, the context, the time period, and who is telling what is going on in history. So one of the biggest things going on in history that goes back all the way to the crucifixion of Jesus is the Roman Empire, that then became the Holy Roman Empire, that then went on to do the Inquisitions, that was the Catholic Church, that wants to carry on to this day that they are the first church, yet they have nothing but a child molestation, infection, disease throughout the church. So the best way when you have something so wicked that you have the King of England, you have the Church of England, which was the government and the church back then, that is deciding everything. They put it in Witchcraft Acts. The Witchcraft Act of 1541 was enacted in England, but was repealed in 1547. The Witchcraft Act 1563 introduced the death penalty for any sorcery used to cause someone's death. The Witchcraft Act 1603 reformed the law to include anyone to have made a pact with Satan. So this was a big deal in Scotland and England, okay? Again, although I don't agree with them burning people at the stake, and it was you take into context the time period and who was running the show, the Roman Empire. It was the same thing. It was different. It's the same thing that's continued on that we now call the Catholic Church. To the people of this hamlet, cast out all witches and devils that have annoyed these parts, grievous molestations and curiosities. And you can see the rest. And then this was in Scotland, 1685. George Sinclair's Satan's Invisible World, one of the many tracts published in Scotland arguing against skeptical views of witchcraft. Okay, so part of the problem too was immigrants, religion, land, and neighbors turning against each other and outsiders. On top of this, the Puritans were losing their grip on society as England turned its attention toward the colonies, okay, and started placing more constraints on them and pushing for more religious tolerance. This prompted insecurity from leaders who were desperate to, I can't see all of it, something control. So the Church of England was still causing problems, is what I'm saying. Think of infiltrators, witch hunters, okay, causing superstition. Now, to put, some context, because you're experts today, because they've just been the experts today out of all your universities, in my opinion, have used it. They've been a great tool of sorcery in many ways. Now they would say I'm just some crazy person, right? But obviously there was something to all of this. There was still all this molestation stuff taking place. Obviously the women they were burning at the stake, burnings didn't take place here, hangings did, not burnings, but in Scotland and England they were burning some at the stake. It was not right. Obviously, I said what the answer is, that the answer is not to go and do this to people. But if people are found to have molested children, they should go to jail. But what has the Catholic Church done throughout its history? Because it was once the Holy Roman Empire. It was once the ones that did the Inquisition. I mean, it's what our pilgrims were fleeing. So separate the pilgrims from the Catholic Church, because they didn't agree with that stuff. But when it was the colonies, it was still being controlled by the Church of England. That's why eventually came to war. So witch trials occurred also in the English colonies where English law was applied. This was particularly the case in the 13 colonies in North America. Examples of these were the Connecticut witch trials from 1647 to 1663. The most famous of these trials were the Salem witch trials in 1692. 2 women were acquitted of witchcraft charges in the province of Pennsylvania in 1683 after a trial in Philadelphia before William Penn. The Witchcraft Acts were a historical succession of governing laws in England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, and the British colonies on penalties for the practice, or in later years, rather for pretending to practice witchcraft. So people need to understand that the Church of England, which was the government, which before that was the Holy Roman Empire, the Inquisitions, go all the way, I keep saying goes all the way back, and is the Catholic Church, okay? They were setting all the rules down. This is why people fled it. So, like the Act of Uniformity. That's why I don't like the United stuff sometimes, because it's like, oh, let's just all be uniformed in groupthink. So I don't agree with the witch trials, okay? It was obviously, it was people being made afraid. But this is also the way, you have your higher educated in this country that want to say, oh, evil, that's just silly, the devil, that's just religious people. The very fact that they don't look at a spiritual leader or a clergy member violating a child and molesting them as evil shows just how stupid the higher educated are, just saying. So the Act of Uniformity itself is one of the 4 crucial pieces of legislation known as the Clarendon Code, named after Edward Hyde, Earl of Clarendon, Charles II's Lord Chancellor. And as you can see here, the Corporation Act of 1661, this first of the 4 statutes which made up the Clarendon Code required all municipal officials to take Anglican communion and formally reject the Solomon League and Covenant of 1643. The effect of this act was to exclude nonconformists from public office. The legislation was rescinded in 1828. But this is all the stuff, all these acts that the Church of England put in. And these were some of the nonconformists were Protestant Christian, and these are the people that fled here. Okay, but you have to remember there was an open border. It wasn't like anybody's controlling the border. Many people were coming here. Many people that infiltrated as witch hunters just to make America, there's always been somebody that wants to make America look horrible. And yes, we have some things in our history that are bad, but look, it's the same. Scotland burned people at the stake. So did England. I just read Ireland, all of it. So there may possibly be something to it. The problem is, I think that the nonconformists, the people that came here, knew that church was being run by something wicked. But to blame the people that came, the pilgrims, for the witch trials isn't exactly fair, because at that time it was still the colonies. And this is how far the Act of Uniformity went. It was, it prescribed the form of public prayers, administration of sacraments. Basically, none of the nonconformists could hold office. And these people went on to be persecuted too. no different than those witch trials. So where do you think the witch trials were being created out of? Put it together.